If your tennis elbow isn't getting better, there's a good chance you may be making one or more common mistakes without even realizing it. The good news is the most of these mistakes are completely fixable once you understand what keeps the tendon irritated. In this video, I'll walk you through 3 of the biggest mistakes I see people make during tennis elbow recovery and explain what you should do instead. By the end of this video, you'll know how to avoid the most common setbacks that keep tennis elbow lingering for months. Mistake number 1 is trying to rehab while continuing to overload the tendon with aggravating activities. This is probably the biggest mistake I see in the clinic, and it's not specific to tennis elbow. Many people think they can simply add a few strengthening exercises while continuing all of the activities that have been irritating their elbow in the first place. Unfortunately, that's usually not how tendon rehabilitation works. I often tell my patients that sometimes you have to take 1 step back to go 2 or 3 steps forward. Many people try to rehab and play. They continue playing tennis, pickleball, golf, lifting weights, or playing other sports that consistently aggravate the tendon while hoping a few exercises will solve the problem at the same time. But this doesn't just apply to sports, it also applies to work. Many of my patients have physically demanding jobs that require repetitive gripping, lifting, carrying, hammering, drilling, wrenching, or using hand tools throughout the day. They understandably hope they can simply do their exercises before or after work while continuing to work the exact same way. Unfortunately, if the tendon is being repeatedly overloaded for 8 to 10 hours every day, it's very difficult for it to calm down and adapt. This is one of the reasons why tennis elbow is one of the most common work-related injuries in the world and one of the leading causes of sick days used in the United States each year. Over the years, I've had many patients temporarily transition to modified or light duty work while their tendon recovered. I know this can sound intimidating. Many people worry that asking for modified duty means they've failed or that they've let their employer down. In reality, temporary activity modification is a very common part of treating repetitive overuse injuries. Remember, the goal isn't to avoid work or sports forever. The goal is to temporarily reduce the amount of load on the tendon while gradually rebuilding its capacity through a progressive strengthening program. As the tendon becomes stronger and more tolerant of load, you can gradually return to the activities you enjoy and the work that's required for your job. Sometimes taking 1 step back really is the fastest way to move forward. Mistake number 2 is wearing a brace all day. Counterforce braces and wrist braces can absolutely play a role during recovery. In fact, I often recommend them in the right situations. But one of the biggest mistakes I see is wearing a brace all day, every day. The purpose of a brace is to temporarily reduce stress on the tendon during activities you simply can't avoid. For example, if you have a physically demanding work shift, a major project, or another activity that's likely to place extra stress on your elbow, wearing a brace may help reduce symptoms and improve your tolerance during that activity. The key is that the brace should be taken off afterwards. A brace should help you through the higher demand activities, not become something your elbow depends on every waking hour. The long-term goal is to build an elbow that's strong enough that you no longer need the brace. If you wear the brace all day, every day, you are actually atrophying your muscles and further contributing to your problem in the long run, which we don't want. So braces can be used for temporary situations, but not for long-term use. I've attached a link in the description below to a counterforce brace I recommend to patients with manual labor jobs to help them get through heavier days they cannot avoid. I've also had patients with manual jobs over the years with tennis elbow that regularly use vibrating tools, and these patients have benefited from vibration dampening gloves during heavier work days. I've also attached a link in the description below for these. Mistake number 3 is doing too much too soon. One of the most frustrating things about tennis elbow is how sensitive the tendon can be. Patients are often surprised by how little it takes to trigger a flare-up. Sometimes lifting a grocery bag, carrying a few heavy boxes, spending extra time on the tennis court, or adding just a few more repetitions in the gym is enough to noticeably increase your symptoms. That's why progression matters so much. Just because something feels good today doesn't necessarily mean your tendon is ready for a major increase tomorrow. Recovery is built through small, consistent increases in load over time, not sudden leaps. This applies to your exercises, your work, your hobbies, and your return to sports. Trying to progress too quickly often leads to a flare-up, forcing you to backtrack and delaying recovery. Instead, think of tendon rehabilitation as gradually raising your tendon's capacity to tolerate load. The goal isn't to see how much you can do today. The goal is to steadily increase what your tendon can comfortably handle over the coming weeks and months. A good rule of thumb as you start seeing progress is to return to your prior activities in percentages. For example, you return at 25% of what you were doing prior. If it went well, then you progress to 50%, then 75%, and finally 100%. Remember, recovery isn't about avoiding activity forever. It's about respecting what your tendon can tolerate today so you can do more tomorrow. In the next video, we'll discuss one of the most common questions I receive from patients. When do you actually need imaging for tennis elbow? And what can x-rays, ultrasound, and MRI findings really tell us?